My name is Tim de Jonge. I'm rounding up my PhD right now at Radboud. This paper came from a workshop earlier, co-written with a lot of other people who are also at Radboud University. And I'm looking to take you through deceptive patterns and what we can do about them. So, as you might be familiar with, fairness has been given a lot of attention in recent years, and throughout fields as well. Here within law, we have like competition law, data protection law, but also computer science has a lot of fairness going on. And bridging the two fields as well, there's just a lot of research about fairness. So given that we had a problem in which fairness was not used yet, deceptive patterns, the question, can we apply fairness to this as well, seems sort of natural. I think this is the screen right, yeah. So I'll be taking you through a little bit of background, what are deceptive patterns, and then from there we'll be looking towards how can a design pattern be fair, and what actually happens when we apply fairness to design patterns, and conclude at the end. As mentioned, this came from a workshop. This workshop was at the Lawrence Center. If you haven't heard of it, I recommend you look at it. It's a place in the Netherlands for organizing workshops. If you are a scientist with a good idea about a workshop, you go to them. They can do some organization and help you out with figuring out what you need. And this one was on deceptive patterns. And deceptive patterns are a specific type of design pattern. Design pattern is intended for reusable, is a reusable solution to a given problem. Deceptive patterns are not a solution to a problem, but are a problem in and of themselves, because they are user interfaces, that's the domain we are in right now, where the designs either confuse users or make it difficult for users to express their preferences or manipulate users in any way. So any kind of design that doesn't really help you, rather does the opposite. The most famous example of this is some kind of a cookie banner where you have to click through 300 options to get away from it, but if you want to accept it, that's just one button. So the option that the company wants is made very easy, but the option that you would want is made very difficult. The other thing is, if you want to buy, it's made very easy. If you want to cancel, that's a lot more difficult. You have to call an actual phone number, where a subscription can be just one click. These types of patterns is what we're talking about when we're thinking about deceptive patterns. Now here, we cannot use fair in a very strict definition. Here we're using fair. There's no definition of fairness for user interface design quite yet. So we have to sort of digest all these other fairness definitions we have from the other field, where basically it boils down to fairness is something morally just in a substantive kind of way. So it's this thick sense of moral right. So for a quick point here, if we go into how a design pattern can be fair, one of the problems is that fairness is contextual. The following example is not found on Amazon itself. The composition is mine, but this would be an example of what it could look like. And something that has happened, that if you look for batteries on Amazon, then there's a leftmost Amazon's choice, which is Amazon's own product themselves. They choose to highlight a product that is theirs, thereby benefiting themselves through user interface design. This may be found objectionable as they control both the market and they control what is being shown. So here, they're manipulating the market in a way. Again, the example is mine, the broader case existed. On the other hand, LinkedIn presented a paper 2 years ago saying that for recommendation for jobs, we could be highlighting users in a different way. If we're looking for a vice president, it might not be very easy to see right here, which might be getting middle-aged whiter men. Where it might be nice to have a side view of like talent you might have missed, which is someone who is not a white man. In this way, this is highlighting a user. This is in effect the same design pattern being used. We are highlighting one object in a broader recommender system, used in two very different ways, and as such with two very different implications. It's not the design pattern itself that carries moral value, it's the use of the design pattern that carries the moral value. And this fairness is different from other moral values. Something like anonymity can be judged from just design intervention, from the technical part. If for authentication you need a passport, that is less anonymous than if you just need a login and username, which is, again, less anonymous than if you don't need to provide any details to use the service at all. The fairness of a design, however, depends very much on the context. If I want to play online poker for real money, I might be quite all right with having to provide authentication. They might want to make sure that I'm above 18 and not cheating. However, if I want to play online chess, this becomes a lot more cumbersome. So fairness is contextual, and that is different from other values. So using fairness as a design value is not so easy. The other problem is that fairness is contestable. We might not agree on what fairness means. And a part of the problem there is that fairness has constituent parts. So we might name, for example, accessibility, privacy, autonomy, or economic factors. And even there, we can argue about this list. You might add in transparency or any other number of factors. And even if we agree on these factors, choosing the right trade-off between these factors can be difficult even within one context. So for an example, privacy notices are usually listed as an example where it's difficult to level. Having a complete sense of text makes it very transparent, makes sure that the user can know what is being done with their data. But on the other hand, it's very unusable. So they're doing the right trade-off if you want to inform your users, but you also want to make sure your users can actually use it. It's difficult. So the trade-offs here are also a problem, which leads to difficulties with applying fairness on the design pattern level. If we have fairness as a very thick concept that is substantive and very situated and contextual, that doesn't apply very well to the abstraction of a design pattern where we want to strip away the context and want to reuse it across different contexts. So if you want a design pattern to be fair, you have to be first very specific about the context of the design pattern in which we deploy it. Second, we have to be very specific about what we mean by fair in which context. The company might disagree with what we think is fair. And even then, it might be wiser to use a different term. If you just want to do something that's very transparent, it might be wise to just name transparency as such as a value rather than sticking it to fairness. Even if we get to a fair pattern, we're still not out of the woods if we want to apply it. Say, for example, if we have, we're on this one now. We're skipping past. If we have a cookie banner, this can be a very nice cookie banner. It's just yes, no, submit, doing great. So I might be very happy with this. But if the underlying policy that you agree with is we will publish all your data online and we will do our best to advertise it, that might make us less happy. So just user interface design cannot fix the larger problem that might be underlying it. If there are broader problems, just design cannot do away with that. The naming the problem fair might misguide companies or people into thinking that something good is going on, while in actuality that's not happening. The other thing is that people might get overzealous and might try to use design to fix society's ills at large, to go for climate change through design, or climate change solutions, which has the problem that we are putting responsibility squarely on the individual for problems that are societally wide. So if people want to choose to compensate, this is in Dutch, sorry, this is KLM's page for do you want to compensate your CO2 emissions while you are flying, which is a very nice initiative, but does mean the benefits go to everyone and the costs are only carried by those who choose to use this. Responsibilization is a common term used here and is also broadly regarded as if there is a societal problem, we must work towards this as a society, we must use policy to do this and not design and putting it on the individual. Fortunately, it's not all doom and gloom. Practical solutions are still very much possible. We do not have to go through fairness as a gold standard. We can just go, well, there is a problem right now in this particular regard, and we can solve that locally. In particular, in German, the law was just accepted a year ago by now for two-click cancellation, which means that for any service, it is required that if you have subscribed for it, you can cancel by 2 clicks. The first click is cancel your contract here. The second click is terminate now, and then you're done. You're out, it's finished. Whether this is fair or not can still be argued. I think if you're a company and you want to keep your users in, you might argue this is limiting your freedom as a company. However, for users, they might be quite pleased with it. Whether this is fair is not really relevant. We can just agree that this might be a good thing. So if we're looking forward from where to go from here, I might have ended up at value sensitive design as a result. If we have these different constituent parts and we have to balance these, it might be nice to just develop in the directions of these different values and see how we can balance them in a particular instance. More broadly, we can also look at practical problems and try to solve those practical problems rather than try to appeal to some gold standard where it's not clear who is being served by that gold standard. In swift conclusion, fairness, if we try to apply it as a thick notion, is contextual and contestable, which makes it difficult to apply to the design pattern level. Even if we do succeed in that, fair patterns can be used, but have to be used in support of policy. There still has to be an underlying broader approach to support design interventions. As a more positive conclusion, we can still very much make improvements, but they will be more likely to be incremental and small rather than targeting perfection as a standard and not accepting anything beneath that. Thank you for your attention.